For my problem of evil, I went with the evidential problem of evil, and the conclusion for this argument is, therefore, an omnipotent, omniscient, holy good being does not exist according to the evidential argument. And the premises supporting this conclusion are, there are instances of meaningless, intense suffering that could have been prevented by an omnipotent, omniscient being without thereby losing some greater good or permitting some evil equally bad or worse. And the second premise is, an omniscient, holy good being would prevent any such suffering it could, unless it could not do so without thereby losing some greater good or permitting some evil equally bad or worse. The implicit premises in this argument: meaningless, intense suffering is bad and should be prevented. If an evil is to occur without leading to a better outcome or preventing another worse evil, it should always be prevented, as it would then be meaningless. An omniscient, holy good being should be preventing evil whenever possible, so long as it doesn't lead to a greater good being forfeited or allowing a worse evil to occur. And an omniscient, omnipotent being will always choose the outcome that leads to the greater good. So the reasoning used in this argument, it uses deductive reasoning because the premises guarantee the conclusion. Premise 1 is basically saying that if there were an all-good, all-powerful God, he would prevent bad things from happening when they seemingly occur for no good reason, such as failing to lead to a greater good or preventing another worse evil from occurring. Premise 2 is basically saying a God should always prevent evils from occurring unless it would lead to a better outcome for them or prevent something worse. And this logic will lead us to believe that a God does not exist, since there are instances of preventable, meaningless suffering that we witness often, guaranteeing the conclusion. Is it valid? This argument is valid because if both of these premises are true, the conclusion would logically follow from the premises. Is it sound? This argument is sound considering the premises are true and the argument is valid. Is it a problem for a classical theist? I do think it is a problem for a classical theist because this argument challenges this belief in a very strong way, with strong defenses against possible refutations. To start off, this argument might be refuted with the claim that we simply may not be able to see what greater good awaits as a result of these instances of evil being permitted. This is because that would require omniscience on our part. And, well, we can look at the immense amount of evil occurrences happening daily, and considering this vast amount, it would seem very unlikely that every last one of these instances are permitted for a greater good result or to prevent a worse evil. And even if they were, surely an all-good, all-powerful God would be able to prevent some of these evils without losing a greater good or permitting a worse evil. It just is unreasonable to believe such a claim, even if we cannot prove that this is the case for all instances. And another point that may be brought up is the fact that such suffering might be justified as it leads to moral and spiritual development. And while this may be true, there exist instances where one suffers far more than necessary in order for such character development to occur. And theists cannot know what greater goods achieved or evils prevented might be related to a particular situation, and they also cannot claim to know that God has a reason for permitting evils due to their traditional religious beliefs stating that they cannot know God's purpose. The implications for philosophy are stronger and more complex debates surrounding the existence of such a God, with the evidential problem of evil serving as a valid and sound argument for atheism. The implications for theology are centered on how God's nature might not be as pure or at least as omnipotent as previously thought after considering this evidential problem. The implications for religious beliefs are quite intense, as this argument forces believers to reconsider traditional beliefs regarding their all-good, all-powerful God, and at the least requires them to acknowledge the valid and sound argument made against his nature and existence. Do I find this argument persuasive? I do, because God is supposedly an all-good being, yet he allows preventable, intense evils to occur in immensity. And when considering the fact that he does not prevent certain evils from happening that wouldn't have led to a greater good or prevented a worse evil, it becomes difficult to not side with this argument for me. And a possible objection is the free will defense. Basically, God gave us free will as a greater good for necessarily permitting evil due to this free will. Theists may also say that good can only exist because evil exists, but doesn't that burden the argument that God is a benevolent being, since he indirectly allows evils to happen even if it's necessary to maintain free will for his creations? The problem with this objection is it doesn't cover the evils the evidential argument references. It only explains evils pertaining to the actions directly committed by humans or moral evils, and not natural evils like animal suffering or child suffering. The burning fawn example, where a fawn is trapped in a forest fire due to lightning striking nearby and suffering agonizing burns until death relieves its suffering several days later, is a notable one that perfectly explains the meaningless, intense suffering that occurs in this world, which is not explained away by the free will defense.